Hello people, today we are going to learn about planning process group, project management processes, sequence activities process. So let's see. What is activities? Sequence activities is the process of identifying and documenting relationship among the project activities. The key benefit of this process is that it defines the logical sequence of work to obtain the greatest efficiency given all project constraints. The inputs are schedule management plan, activity list, activity attributes, milestone list, project scope statement, enterprise environmental factors, organizational process asset. Tools and techniques used are Precedence Diagramming Method, also called PDM, Dependency Determination, Leads and Lags, and the output is project schedule network diagrams and project document updates. So let's see input one by one. I've already spoken about schedule management plan in detail in my past tutorial, so if you want to get more idea on that, you can go back to my channel and search for that particular video and listen to it to understand more. In brief, the schedule management plan identifies the scheduling method and tool to be used for the project, which will guide how activities may be sequenced. The second input is activity list. Activity list contains all schedule activities required on the project which are to be sequenced. Dependencies and other constraints for these activities can influence the sequence of activities. Other input is activity attributes. Activity attributes may describe a necessary sequence of event or define predecessor or a successor relationship. Milestone list. The milestone list may have scheduled dates for a specific milestone which may influence the way activities are sequenced. Project scope statement. I have already spoken about project scope statement in past in detail. So you can again go back to my channel and search for these things. I've also spoken about activity schedule, activity list, activity attributes, and milestone list in my past tutorial. So if you want to learn detail and how we came up with these and keywords, you can go back to my channel and learn about different processes like define activities, plan, schedule management before listening to this tutorial to understand more. So let's see in brief what is plan scope management. The project scope management. The project scope statement contains the product scope description, which includes product characteristic that may affect activity sequencing, such as physical layout of a plant to be constructed or subsystem interfaces on a software project. Other information from project scope statement include project deliverables, project constraints, project assumption may also affect activity sequencing. While these effects are often apparent in the activity list, the product scope description is generally reviewed to ensure the accuracy. Other inputs are uh, enterprise environmental factor, and this is a wrong heading. It should be OPA, that is organizational process asset. So let's see one by one. What is EF? EFs that influence the sequence activities process include government or industry standard project management information system, also called PMIS, scheduling tool, and company work authorization system. This is OPA, which is organizational process asset that can influence the sequence activity process include project files from the corporate knowledge base used for scheduling methodology, existing formal and informal activity planning related policies, procedures, guidelines such as scheduling methodologies that are considered in developing logical relationships, and templates that can be used to expedite the preparation of networks of project activities. Related activity attributes information in template can also contain additional descriptive information useful in sequencing activities. Let's see tools and techniques used to develop the process sequence activities. So first tool and technique used is Precedence Diagramming Method, also called PDM. PDM is a technique used for constructing a schedule model in which activities are represented by nodes and are generally linked by one or more logical relationship to show the sequence in which the activities are to be performed. Activity on node, or also called AON, is one method of representing a precedence diagram. And other method is like activity on node. There is another method which called arrow diagramming method, which is ADM. It uses arrow to represent activities and connects arrow with nodes which represent dependencies. But this are not this ADM, which is arrow diagramming method, is not so popular. Usually everyone uses activity on node diagram. This method used by most project management software packages. PDM includes four types of dependencies or logical relationship. A predecessor activity is an activity that logically comes before dependent activity in a schedule. As you all know, the definition of predecessor and definition of successor is a successor activity is a dependent activity that logically comes after another activity in a schedule. So the four kind of relationship are finish to finish, also called finish to start, also called FS, finish to finish, also called FF, start to start, also called SS, and start to finish, also called SF. So let's see one by one. What is finish to start? A logical relationship in which successor activity cannot start until predecessor activity has finished. Example, the award ceremony, which is successor, cannot start until the race, the predecessor, has finished. So in order to remember this, you have to start with the keyword cannot and start with the second letter. Cannot start until the first one has finished. Cannot finish until the first one has finished. Cannot start until the first one has started. Cannot finish until the first one has started. So let's see the second one. Finish to finish. A logical relationship in which successor activity cannot finish until a predecessor activity has finished. Example, writing a document, which is a predecessor activity, is required to finish before editing the document successor can finish. A logical relationship in which successor activity cannot start until predecessor activity has started. The level example is level concrete, which is a successor activity, cannot begin until the pour foundation predecessor begins. In case of start to finish, is a logical relationship in which successor activity cannot finish until a predecessor activity has started. Example, the first security guard shift, who is a successor, cannot finish until the second security guard shift predecessor starts. So guys, I hope you got an idea on these four kinds of relationship for Precedence diagramming method. Dependencies are characterized by the following attributes: mandatory or discretionary, internal or external. Dependencies has four attributes, but two can be applicable at the same time in the following ways: mandatory external dependencies, mandatory internal dependencies, discretionary external dependencies, or discretionary internal dependencies. So let's see one by one about the four dependencies. First one is mandatory dependencies. These are those that are legally or contractually required or inherent in nature of the work, often involve physical limitations such as on a construction project where it is impossible to erect the superstructure until after the foundation has been built, or an electronic project where a project prototype has to be built before it can be tested. Referred to as hard logic or hard dependency, technical dependency may not be a mandatory. What's discretionary? Discretionary are sometimes referred to as preferred logic or preferential logic or soft logic, are established based on knowledge of best practices within the particular application area or some unusual aspect of the project where a specific sequence is desired, even though there may be other acceptable sequences. Should be fully documented since they can create arbitrary total float values and can limit later scheduling options. When fast tracking techniques are employed, these discretionary dependencies should be reviewed and considered for modification or removal. The project team determines which dependencies are discretionary during the process of sequencing activities. What are external dependencies? They involve a relationship between project activities and non-project activities. These dependencies are usually outside the project team's control. For example, a testing activity in a software project may be dependent on the delivery of hardware from the external source, or governmental environmental hearings may need to be held before site preparation can begin on a construction project. In case of internal dependencies, it involves a precedence relationship between project activities and are generally inside project team's control. For example, if team cannot test a machine until they assemble it, this is an internal mandatory dependency. The project management team determines which dependencies are internal during the process of sequencing the activities. Now let's learn about the other two-line technique, which is leads and lags. What are leads? A lead is the amount of time whereby successor activity can be advanced with as respect to the predecessor activity. For example, on a project to construct a new office building, the landscaping could be scheduled to start 2 weeks prior to the scheduled punch list completion. This would be shown as finished to start with 2 weeks lead as shown in here in the figure. This one shows the lead because the complete punch list when complete punch list ends, logically when complete punch list ends, then the landscape building should start in case of finish to start. Once first one is finished, this one should start. That means this cannot start until this one has finished in case of finish to start relationship. But whenever we are trying to use lag, we can start the second activity before the first one has finished, and use the lag time. That means we can, in case of 2 weeks lead, sorry, not lag, lead. In case of 2 weeks lead, we can start the landscape building lot 2 weeks before the scheduled date. That means fs minus 2 weeks. So here when we are here at the punch list, we can start, still 2 weeks are left, but we can start using the lead thing. We can start the landscape building lot 2 weeks before the actual start date. So it is called lead. Whenever we start before time, it's called lead. In case of lag, a lag is the amount of time whereby a successor activity will be delayed with respect to a predecessor activity. For example, a technical writing team may begin editing the draft of a large document 15 days after they begin writing it. This can be shown as start-to-start relationship with 15 days lag. The lag can also be represented in the project schedule diagram as shown in figure behind, in the relationship between the activity H and I as indicated in the nomenclature SS plus 10, start to start plus 10 days lag, even though the offset is not shown relative to the time scale. So here in case of H and I, this is the H activity and this is I activity. This shows start to start relationship. That means I cannot start until the H until and unless H has started. But in case of using lag technique, lags two line technique, and there is a lag of 10 days, that means when after H has started, I can wait for 10 days before it can start. So SS plus 10 is the lag time for I to start. So let's see here the back example of writing draft. This is start to start relationship. That means we have to write a draft and we can edit the draft at the same time. In case of the editing draft, which is the successor activity, edit draft cannot start until the write draft has started. So once the write draft has started, if you are using lag, then edit draft can start 15 days after the write draft has started. So that means SS minus 15 will give you lag. Output is obviously project schedule network diagram. Project schedule network diagram is graphical representation of logical relationship, also referred to as dependencies, among the project schedule activities. A project schedule network diagram is produced manually or by using the project management software. It can include full project details or have one or more summary activities. A summary narrative can accompany the diagram and describe the basic approach used to sequence the activities. Any unusual activity sequence within the network should be fully described within the narrative. So guys, I hope you got some idea on the process sequence activity. Let me explain again how to calculate the leads and lags. So in case of lead, you just need to, the next activity must be advanced with respect to the previous activity. That means in case of lead, the next activity must be advanced. Advanced means it should be started before the actual timing. So for 2 weeks lead, it should start 2 weeks before the actual timing. So actual timing was FS, then FS minus 2 weeks will be the actual timing when using leads tools and techniques. In case of lag, this should be plus SS plus 15 days. In case of lag, we need to use plus sign. That means next activity must be delayed with respect to the previous activity. So example here, we must delay the edit draft 15 days from the actual start date of editing the draft. And this is the start to start relationship. Start to start means the first, in order to start the edit draft, write draft must be started. This is finish to start relationship. That means in order to start the landscape building a lot, the punch list must be finished. Here also there is an example of lead and lag. Lead and lag is here H and I activity. We are using the lead technique. Sorry, not lead, it's lag technique, because SS plus 10. SS plus 10 means it is the next activity is delayed by 10 days. So I is delayed by 10 days from H. So that's why we are using SS plus 10. That means the I must, I, in order for I to start, H must have started. So once, if we are using lag technique, that means H has started and we wait for 10 days, then we start for I. So remember, lead always uses minus. That means the activity must be advanced, and lag always uses plus. That means the activity must be delayed. And the four kinds of, let's revise the four kind of dependency determination attributes, which was mandatory, external, internal, and discretionary. Mandatory was hard logic inherent in the work, legally or contractually required. Discretionary was preferred logic, preferential or soft logic defined by project team based on the best practices. And it was the external and internal. External involved relationship between project and non-project activities, and internal involves relationship between project activities. So guys, I hope you got some idea on all these things. Output was obviously P network project diagram, which is used in calculating critical path method, which we'll learn later. So I hope you got some idea on how to create sequence activities. This is very important tutorial for making the critical path method in the examples. So we will discuss later. Thank you very much for watching.